Nick Angstadt from Locked On NBA here. I'm joined by Jeff Garcia, host of Locked On Spurs. And Jeff, we're going to talk about the San Antonio Spurs, something that you don't talk enough about. Let's talk first about the playoff rotation. Who on this Spurs team is going to be part of the playoff rotation? Who's on the inside and who's on the outside now, if they're going to limit it now for the playoffs?
That's a great question, and here's my answer. I don't know because this team has been hit by injuries of late. The biggest one is Derek White right before I guess the play is supposed to start a few weeks ago to wind down the season. So that leaves a big hole. Popovich has been opting to go with Lonnie Walker. Great. But sometimes he's on the bench, and sometimes it's Devin Vassell, the rookie, that steps in. So that off guard point guard spot is kind of in flux right now. So I think things will hash out once the opposition is known. I think Popovich is going to wait till we know who exactly the Spurs are going to take. But it would not surprise me to see Lonnie Walker get that starting nod, and then it'll be the usual suspects for that starting other four, if you will: DeRozan, Pirtle, Johnson, and Murray. It's just that fifth guy. That's the rotation right now that is kind of in flux. Either it's Vassell or Walker. So it's usually one of those two guys. And we'll find out very soon. Now, as far as role players, again, this team is nothing but role players.
Yeah.
That's all they are. So it's going to be the collective. Now, the good news is that this season, one thing that San Antonio has proven is that they can have multiple players carry the offensive burden and multiple players do some damage on the defensive end. Not a lot. Spurs they're kind of shaky on the defensive end. But all in all, I think it's going to be by committee. DeMar DeRozan said after the game versus New York that he will lend his playoff experience to this very young team as they head into the play-in tournament to make the playoffs. So you will definitely see the Spurs young guys rely on DeMar DeRozan. Hopefully not too much, because that has been disastrous whenever the Spurs rely on DeMar DeRozan. All you got to look at is what happened against Boston. That'll tell you exactly why. One of the big reasons why they lost that game. As far as the fan favorite, again, pick one. Derek White, Keldon Johnson, great. Lonnie Walker, great. Devin Vassell, great. This team, again, it's unusual. There's no main mega star on here. There's not. DeMar DeRozan is their closest, and that's it. So if there's to be a fan favorite right now, I would more refine it more like a fan favorite for the X factor, and that would be Lonnie Walker. I think he's going to have to really step up in the absence of not only Derek White, but also they lost another body versus Brooklyn, Luka Samanic, a guy that may not get a lot of run, but when he does play, he does bring stuff on both ends of the court, mainly on the defensive end. So all in all, again, this is a team of role players. And that's what you got. They are what they are. They're in a 500 team because they're still learning this game.
Yeah, and role players that could fit around a star for sure if you start to piece them together and find the right guy. The biggest strengths and weaknesses of this team. What is this team really, really good at, and where do they struggle?
Well, one thing they are good at, as I just mentioned right now, is that they have offensive balance. Offensively, they're really good. DeMar DeRozan can explode for a DeMar DeRozan game, but then you have Keldon Johnson. You have guys like Dejounte Murray, Devin Vassell, Lonnie Walker. The list goes on and on. Yes, even Jakob Poeltl. He flirted with a triple-double last week. So that's their biggest strength, is just the balance. And I would have to say a bench. The good news is Patty Mills is out of whatever funk that he was in leading up to the games in the Big Apple. He really was in a bad spot. I'm talking nights where he was over. Now, this is Patty Mills. Just not shooting the ball well. He's shaking the rust, whatever's got into him. He shook it off. He's looking like he's back in form. Rudy Gay is another guy that the Spurs are going to look at as far as helping on both ends of the floor. At this point of his career, he is what he is. Fans should not be expecting Memphis Rudy Gay anytime soon. And biggest weakness is they take their foot off the gas pedal. Versus New York, they had a 17-point lead, and they blew it. We all know what happened against Boston, and we've seen this time and time again. This team plays up to competition and down to competition. They're so Jekyll and Hyde. That is their weakness. They're not consistent. They are not a stable team. And when things get going, and this is a team mainly of young guys, they rely too much on veterans that are, not enough. There's a reason why DeMar DeRozan is not a Raptor anymore. Toronto was willing to trade him. All in all, I think the biggest weakness is inconsistency, defensive lapses, and they're young. They're going to make mistakes. Time and time again, they're making mistakes. Costly turnovers when the game is on the line. Passing up good shots for bad shots. And of course, again, they're nothing but role players. So somebody's going to have to step up, and that's going to have to be DeMar DeRozan in this play-in tournament. It's win or go home. We all know that. DeMar DeRozan knows that. He's telling these guys they're playing for their playoff lives. It's just going to be good experience for them, Nick.
Yeah, it'll be great to see them. You talked a lot about some of these big losses, but what are some of the big wins the Spurs have had this season where you go, man, that was just a good, feel-good win, and team feels good after?
They're far and few between. You got the Milwaukee game where they just detonated on the Bucks in San Antonio, 140 plus points, shattered records on the offensive end for on the franchise end. And you got games against the Lakers and the Clippers early in the season. They go to the Lakers and the Clippers gym and just beat them. And that's the thing. The Spurs team has caused so many heartache this season for fans that is you tend to forget the big wins. But those are kind of the highlight wins right there. Getting that win against Milwaukee, getting a couple of 4-game win streaks early in the season. But they came back down to earth really fast in that second half of the season, and they are what they are, a 500 team.
They had a pretty good clutch win over the Dallas Mavericks with DeMar DeRozan hitting that game winner. That was a heartbreaker for Mavs fans.
That it was, but that tells you how many there's too many heartbreakers than heartwarming wins than the season for San Antonio.
What are the playoff stakes for this team? So going into the play-in, into the playoffs.
I had to laugh at that question. Playoff stakes for the Spurs. All right.
But what's going to happen? I mean, we know that like Pop's not on the hot seat, right? That's not a thing that we can talk about. Like but it's DeMar DeRozan. He's going to be a free agent, right? Is it if they lose, then they're not going to re-sign him? Is if they lose, then they have to make a big trade? What's the stakes for this team?
I think the positive stake is that this young core is going to get experience, whether they get the one win and move on, or they get the one game in and they're bounced. Just to give this young core a feel of what it's like for a playoff-like game, a win or go home. I think that's going to be the big thing. And Popovich has pointed to it, and Pirtle has pointed to it, and Murray's pointing to it, that, that's how they're going to look at this play-in game. Also, too, could this be the last few games as DeMar DeRozan in a Spurs uniform? He is playing for a contract. He is a free agent after this season. I think that's another thing to look at, how he plays. Is he going to play, are they going to shelve him? That's going to be a big sign of where his destination is going to be. It's whether in San Antonio or not. All in all, I just think the Spurs got nothing really to lose. If you play well, great, you win and move on. If you don't, well, that's expected because you guys were not really expected to make some sort of playoff run, at least deep into the playoffs. So all in all, I think you have experience gained, the possibility of watching DeMar DeRozan in the Spurs uniform for the final time. Rudy Gay, I don't expect him to be back. Patty Mills, I don't think this franchise is going to let that guy in. He's the last link to the golden era of San Antonio, the big three, and a little bit of Kawhi Leonard.
Man, wow.
Yeah, on the player side, of course, there's Popovich. Right. Also, too, something else to look at, too, is Becky Hammon. And towards the end of the season, I was there for Spurs Nets and Spurs Knicks. And as the season went on, you're seeing her more lead huddles more and more often now. So that's something to look at, her future in San Antonio, whether it be at her position as first assistant coach or elsewhere, or perhaps the head coach in San Antonio. So another thing to look at as these playoffs, play-in tournament, I should say, is set to begin for San Antonio. Yeah, Nick, it's just so weird to be a Spurs fan right now and to cover this team because it just feels like they were going at 100 miles an hour and they just hit the brakes. You go from the LaMarcus Aldridge time where at least he's keeping the team in the playoffs, literally in the like 7th or 6th, something like that. But now to be looking at the outside in, it's just a different era in San Antonio.
There's not a ton of national narratives about the San Antonio Spurs. Probably most of them are about Popovich or Becky Hammon. But what's a national narrative you think is wrong, misunderstood? Or maybe there's a narrative that you wish people would talk about more, that you wish that the national media would cover more? I think right now, and I think it started to at the end of the season, is Dejounte Murray. His rise is eye opening. Sports Illustrated
had a really good interview slash article about him. Actually, the author Michael Pena, he came on Locked On Spurs, and by the way, I urge everybody to go check that one out because I was able to get him, Nick, to give more than what he should have given. So
Nice.
he
Always the goal.
Yeah, he did that. You'll be surprised at which coach on that roster that Murray is really close to, and if you guess Popovich, it might be wrong. So I think that is the big narrative right now. Seeing his rise, is he going to be the next guy, the next for San Antonio? No, he's not. But just to know that the Spurs are sitting on this guy here, Dejounte Murray, that is blossoming into a really good guard in the league on both ends of the court. I think that is something that I wish would get more attention to. And also, one thing I think that slips through the cracks outside of San Antonio is just how potent this young team can be when they're on. Ask Milwaukee, ask your Mavericks, ask them. When they're clicking, they can play with the best of them. And I think at the end of the day, they just need more seasoning. And just I really feel they're one athletic big man away from really making noise in the Western Conference. And also I think they need one more athletic defensive wing on this court. And if they do that, I think they'll be fine. I like them into the Miami situation. I think if they can pick a page from Spoelstra, just bringing that Jimmy Butler guy that does everything on both ends of the court, I think the Spurs will be good. No knock on DeMar DeRozan, but DeMar DeRozan is not really the two-way player I think the Spurs team needs.
They take as many threes. He takes as many threes as Jimmy Butler, though.
I wish the Spurs took more threes. I don't care if they miss, just take them. That's something that really is not getting attention to. This how the Spurs they just don't take threes, and when they do, they're horrendous about it. And I think that's I know a lot of the attention is the Spurs need a big. The Spurs need a big. I think they need to address shooting. I think that's the one thing they got a bunch of guys that really can't shoot the ball from beyond the arc, except for Patty Mills. Your next best,
kind of a problem.
Your next best is Derek White, and then after that is maybe your rookie Devin Vassell. That's it.
Yeah, right.
So that's something that I think the national media should give more attention to, not to put them in a negative way, just to see how this team is still rebuilding, is still recovering from what Kawhi Leonard really did to this franchise. He blew a hole right through the future plans.
100%. There you go. Jeff Garcia, go follow and listen to Locked On Spurs, and we'll see what the Spurs do in the play-in tournament.